steadily it rises. Public preference for Lincoln Continental as the symbol for today's luxury motoring.
Hey, it's Jason ODB, the Lincoln Addict, and I want to hit you guys with a quick video. I'm actually going to do a quick overview here, which you're going to see, but don't worry, we'll get to the good stuff with some on-site video from Blair's Lair over in Clearwater. It's a short video, but it will actually show you exactly what I'm talking about here. In 1965, Lincoln offered for the first time emergency flasher option. Sometimes I'm amazed at the features they simply did not have, or even the safety type features in the 60s. As we get to the mid 60s here with 65, you're going to see that this became an option. Basically, $12.80 was an optional feature. It is mentioned, I'll show you here in the dealer brochure, the second to last page. Many of you probably own one of these brochures, or you've seen them surely. But on this page here, you can see where they did mention it is an optional feature in 65 emergency flasher. Now, it's also mentioned, and this kind of seems like a rare item, the accessories and optional equipment brochure. I went through this before on the YouTube channel here, maybe sometime back. I think you can find it if you want to look at all the pages. There's not a lot here, but on page 9, you see that it is mentioned, and there's actually an illustration here of the flashers working. Now, what I would suggest to everyone is take a look at your 65 Lincoln Continental, whether it's a sedan or convertible. You can check to see kind of underneath where the steering wheel's at, up as you go under the dash, if there's a switch there. If you have this option, you may not know it's even there. It's basically a plug and play, and you'll see the video that I did at Blair's Lair, where once it's plugged in, you have that switch, and you can, when you switch it on, basically the hazards will flash like they do in a typical new car. Many of these cars don't. You can source a harness, but they're getting harder to find, like many of the parts in general for these cars. But obviously, as this being an option, it is even more rare. I've always wanted one for my 65, and thanks to Chris Dunn at Lincoln Land and Teresa, I will have one very soon, and Blair is going to do a little bit of his work over at Blair's Lair to make it a good working switch. Now, let's look at the options. Let's say you don't have this in your car, okay? Here's the number one thing. You'll hear a lot of people say you should always have a fire extinguisher in your older car. I know some people look at that and go, no big deal, but I'm telling you, it is worth having. We've seen dash fires in all sorts of old cars, including these Lincolns. I've talked at links about the amp meter needing to be updated in 64, 65 or bypassed. But think about this. I helped Tony one time. His car had died out, not to put him on the spot, but these cars do tend to, at certain times, like old cars, you run into challenges, right? If the points go out, amp meter blows, whatever. But if the car dies and you're in a desolate place, like he kind of was, kind of a dark road, you basically have no way. If you lose power to your car for whatever reason, your car, if it's dark out, no one can see it. It's sitting there. You've got no lights on at all. Even if your battery is not dead, you see here, I'm down here under safety, the factory taillights are not super bright on these cars. So like if you just leave the headlights on, right? You can see, okay, maybe if you're coming up, you can see, okay, there's two taillights there. But it's not like someone's pressing on the brake pedal either, right? So you got your normal running lights, so to speak. But what I would say is, no matter if you've got a 60s Lincoln's, a 50s car, anything, if you don't have hazards, one thing that I always suggest is a friend of mine TC had given me a set of similar to these. There's all kinds of different things. You can kind of go out there and look for, different keywords that you see here on the screen, and you could find something like this, or there's cheaper options. I'm sure you can go to your local kind of big box retailer and buy something similar to this, but just, God forbid, in the event that you do break down, whether you have power in your car or not, at least you would have some sort of safety in terms of alerting oncoming traffic, even if you're pulled off on the side of the road. People are distracted often, texting, driving, looking at maps, doing whatever they're doing in terms of their, infotainment system in their car. Have some sort of item like this, maybe under your seats or in the trunk area or in a bag, that you can rely upon in that unlikely event, hopefully that, you don't break down. What I'd like to do now is I'll show you a couple of photos, what we're getting ready to look at with the video. And let's see if I can make this work here. Okay, so you see here, these were 4 photos I took on yesterday, which was Sunday, July 10th, rather, depending on when I post this video. And basically, this is 2 harnesses. So TC was able to source through Chris at Lincoln Land. So thanks again, Chris. Lincoln Land, love their customer service. They always go above and beyond for their customers. What you're basically looking at is 2 harnesses. However, at some point when someone had taken this one out, they basically broke the switch off. So you have these wires that come in here to this little harness, and this housing and this switch is going to have to be removed, cleaned, checked out, and then it's going to have to basically be put on this side. Okay, so if you look at these, they're pretty much identical. You've got both of your plugs, right? This is plug and play in 65. It was not available in 64. You have this one lead wire here, and you have your hazard relay. Okay, then you have your 2 little plugs here. These are basically identical other than the tape and the switch being broken off. So Blair is a master at everything Lincoln. He's been working on these cars 40 plus years, since the 70s, and even really before then. I mean, he was always in these cars, it seemed like, from talking with him. And what I would say is I'm going to do a video in the near future showing the install of this, right? So if you had access to one of these harnesses and the switch was working and the hazard relay was working, you could plug and play and boom, you're in action. Now, there are some other options that I'll show you in the future that I'm going to do on my 64 Lincoln. And I think you guys will, think it's pretty cool, but I have to do that in the future when we're ready to install it. The last thing I'll show you here is the video that I did. I'll talk a little bit about the harness right here in that same spot where I was standing. I appreciate all the support. I would just ask, if you get a chance, go to LincolnAddict.com, order some stickers. If nothing else, I do have some shirts available, and I'll ship those typically the next business day, if not sooner. But thanks again for all the support. Stay on the rise, and don't forget to check out Lincoln Addict Podcast, however you find podcasts. Check this out. TC was able to locate a wire harness for me. Shout out to TC. Lincoln Land. These are pretty rare. I think it was like $12 to $15 option. 65. You were able to basically add this, and this was for the hazard lights. So believe it or not, think early 60s Lincolns, you're broke down, maybe the batteries died or you don't have power. You literally have no flashers. It just wasn't an option until 65. This one, Blair at Blair's Lair, he's going to do his awesome magic work. Someone had broke the switch off this one. So what we'll end up doing is we'll end up cleaning up the switch, and this will then reside over here. But pretty cool option that I'll be able to do a video on in the future. There are some aftermarket options from that era. I'll talk more about that. That's what I'm going to do on my 64. But this at least gives you something for 65, and it is a pretty rare thing. But I'm also pointing out, because you may not even realize, in your car, if you look up underneath the dash and you have this switch, you may not know what it is for. If it's working, then of course it would be for your hazard. So pretty cool stuff. And then of course that is the piece that you need for the flasher to actually work. So yeah, there you go. A little bit more to come. Thanks to Blair and Teresa. I'm in Clearwater right now. Lincoln's on the rise. Peace.
The Lincoln Continental is the big, roomy luxury car. It will be Motordom's symbol of quality. An automobile and a tradition.